what I'm talking about is anger and how that became the catalyst for my new project, and then how the impact of that anger almost crushed the project. So despite it being the catalyst, it was also the thing that made it kind of almost dissolve. So I should probably start with a rap from the new project. Are we all good there? Are we all able to see this little screen here? And let's see what happens. So this is just a little excerpt, and hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of a starting point.
Are you counting the shots in the sky? Why do the rotten survive? Ivory towers arise while cataracts form in the eyes of the poor. You're putting pork in the pies. Born on the 4th of July, and money is the lord of your life. You're flush now, 4 out of 5. You're bored of the mortgage advice, but what's more important, the sword of the mic. Somewhere in the cockroach night, a poor man is praying for his enemies with the sight beyond sight. Kneeling amongst the rotten fruit and veg and broken glass, he speaks a simple petition and it's not spoken fast. Tenacious woman wisdom is beckoning you with bated breath. You saw her eyes and shoulder blades, now all your doubts are laid to rest. Me, I'm keeping a goth. Susie, Sue and I, we meet in the loft, we're reading a lot. Cities and dust, trust me, I'm concealing a cough. Strange love, sleeping it off. I still dotted, T still crossed. Heaven still coming, light to the text. A king and a fake king fight to the death.
So, a little bit about who I am. I'm a rap lyricist and filmmaker. I've been writing and recording with different rap groups over the years, since about 1991, as a solo artist, and then I've been a member of various groups over time, including the Custodians with my friend Elliot. And as a filmmaker, I'm also a filmmaker, so I've got lots of ideas. I made this film called The Quickener, which was a kind of a rap film, medieval rap film. So as a filmmaker, there's lots of ideas that are completely incompatible with a full-time job. And this is completely a normal situation for so many of us. So sometimes I think, oh, if you give me 6 months and a good budget, I'd make a movie with this guy, Sam, in India. Or seriously, if you give me 9 months and a good budget, I'll make a movie in Russia, this movie, with this guy. Give me 2 months every year for the next 3 years, and I'll make this movie, which I actually dreamed about. So I would love to make it actually a reality. I don't know, give me just a few weeks. I'll design a deadly typeface with these little pieces of, these great little shapes. Give me a little bit of time, a good budget, and I'll do this 23rd century Christians photography project. But when I say give me, I'm actually talking about, most of my work is actually collaborative. So it's actually not about me trying to do things, but, collaborating with various people. So. But surely you can create an album, with a full-time job. You can still do an album on the side, can't you? Just in your spare time. That should even be more the case if you're really, really motivated and there's something brewing really inside of you. Something, and so what happened was I got really, really angry. And that anger continued to brew, and I wasn't really talking about it with many people. My wife went to help in the refugee camp in Moria on the island of Lesbos, and that really struck me. Is the dehumanizing element of how refugees were being treated. The stories were infuriating. They're kind of really heartbreaking stories. So that was a major thing. And you know what? The reason why I was just brewing as well was because I was thinking, loads of things that I'm angry about are things that other people are angry about too. So why should I even share this with anyone else? Because aren't we all going through the same stuff? I mean, right now, some of you some of us are feeling frustration that things are not happening. We're feeling sorrow, fear. So, you know, why should my little worries or my anger matter to anybody else? So I kept it really bottled in, and my goodness, I was extremely moody. And at work, people started to notice and was like, Joel, what's wrong with you? It was definitely weird. It was definitely unhealthy. And so what was I, do you want to hear the list of what I was, so some of the things I was angry about? You know, it's just not, this is not the full list, but it kind of gives you a sense. I was tired of being constantly told to view everything through the lens of individualism and consumerism, including my kids' education and future. The constant exploitation of the weakest and our indifference, and my indifference to that. Public announcements on trains and airports that make you mistrust other humans. That Spanish firefighter, you know this guy, Mikel Roldan, and who was facing jail for helping rescue refugees who would otherwise have drowned in the Mediterranean. Being locked outside of my own will, glowing screens everywhere. I was angry about Hugh's death. I don't know how many of you know Hugh, but he died a year ago yesterday, and he was a part of the Sputnik network, and he's an amazing artist. I was frustrated with Christians not being fully welcoming or loving to other people. Angry about the trauma, the pain of LGBT believers. Psalms being taken completely out of context. How about that? Other mammals becoming nocturnal to avoid humans. It made me sad and angry about that. How about police involved in brutality caught on camera and having their charges dropped? Or the entire prison industrial complex and the terrible conditions, you know, in our prisons. I could go on. How about this? The Library of Birmingham. I hate it. I hate it so much. I'm really angry about it. It doesn't seem meaningful maybe to other people, but I do. I hate it. Things like these were really getting to me, and it was overwhelming. I confessed it in detail to a wise friend, and he encouraged me, you got to write about this. You got to share it with other people. And he said my perspective could actually help others. So even though that might sound like a cliche, I thought, okay, processing this anger through art, recording something, that could actually be meaningful. And I thought I'll be following the footsteps of some of those biblical characters, pouring out rage, grief wholeheartedly, and then also in the footsteps of, you know, some good rage rap as well. I don't know if you know Rage Against the Machine, but Zach, the lead singer, said, every song I've ever written is a love song. So for him, that anger was inspired, that love of other people and seeing them being hurt, that made him angry. Of course, just last week, Chuck D from Public Enemy talked about nurses dying of the coronavirus in Manhattan, and that they had to wear garbage bags as protective gear. Shame on our nation, he said. Immortal Technique. I love the place that I live, but I hate the people in charge. There's some angry rap if you need some. And then one of the most overlooked rappers ever, Paris from Oakland. I think he's been completely shut down because people could not handle his anger. So there you go. I connect with other people's anger and melancholy, and so my hope was maybe other people could connect with mine. In Psalm 88, it says, "Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long, they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken me from friend and neighbor, darkness is my closest friend. And so the question is, why don't Psalms like this make it into our corporate worship? That anger, that lamentation. You know what? There's some of you that probably got, anger is a big catalyst for your work. So maybe in the Q&A we'll get there. This is nothing new to you, and you have actually already written or made something inspired by Psalm 88 or Psalm 73. So that'll be interesting to see. But I think this idea is that anger lamentation can be a language of prayer. So that brings us to my idea of, give me 6 months and I'll make a great hip hop album. So it's called, I don't know what it's called. It might be called Shitstorm. That might be. I was thinking it might be called The Ulcer. The Ulcer, that sounds like something I would do. And it's a collaboration with various people. I managed to get just an amazing pieces of music for this from my friend Elliot, Wasif, and Nathan, who is based in San Francisco. So Elliot and Wasif live in Birmingham. Nathan lives in San Francisco. And the idea is that once I've recorded all the lyrics, we're going to rework the music. And so I'm also inviting various rappers, and some of them already written stuff for the album as well. So one of my favorite rappers in the world, Casper Grant, Tom Grant, I love him to bits. He's going to be on there. Loki, he seems very interested. I'll see what he's one of the big rappers in Scotland, and he's really so passionate and loving that same love that Zach from Rage Against the Machine was talking about. He's definitely got it as well. He's got that love. His anger comes from that love. And of course, it'll be interesting with Loki, since, you know what? Scottish rappers use the C word a lot. So we'll see what happens there. And then one of my all-time favorites, Michael Stork. Man, everything seems to have so amazingly converged. So the music's beautiful, and then I've got these amazing people. There's more, but I'll just leave it there in terms of. But here are the factors that together almost crushed the project. The big factor, especially when you've got a 3-year-old, is energy. So time is really only as useful as the energy you have to make things happen. So I'm not whining about not having the time. It was the fact that there was time, but the energy was completely depleted. Does that make sense? The next thing was screen life. And Andrew Sullivan, this writer for the New York magazine, wrote a great little piece called "I Used to Be a Human Being," and talking about his online life, his screen life, and how much more of his life had become like that. So he said, although I spent hours every day alone and silent, attached to the laptop, I felt as if I were in a constant cacophonous crowd of words and images, sounds and ideas, emotions and tirades, a wind tunnel of deafening, deadening noise. I'd begun to fear that this new way of living was actually becoming a way of not living. You feel the same? You feel that? You feel that as well? Here is my waking hours. I think this is, this is not science here. My waking hours in 2005. So this is when I made an album called My Organs Are Yours. Most of my life was offline. And now here we have my waking hours in 2020. Look at that. It seems like so much more of it is there. So is this a familiar issue? Here's a great quote from Henry Nouwen. He was talking about Without solitude, we remain victims of our society and continue to be entangled in the illusions of the false self. Solitude is the place of the great struggle and the great encounter, the struggle against the compulsion of the false self and the encounter with the loving God. So I'm an introvert, and my introverted self, who needed that solitude, was being pushed out of the way by this new extrovert, addicted to info, online connection. It's like I'd been locked out of my own head. And I would, at the end of the day, go, what's happening? Why can't I make stuff? Where are my real thoughts? Does this feel any element of that? Being locked out of your own head, being distracted so much that your life ends up being distraction. You know, that is your life. It's distraction, and the real you, the real issues are being lost. So that factor one was energy, a loss of energy. Factor two was screen life, and the third was anger itself. So here's the weird thing. Anger was the catalyst for the project, but it ended up being actually the thing that cut it into bits. I wanted to take the lament seriously, and so I tried to approach the project without censoring my thoughts or my anger. And so I did some crying, and as I was writing, I was cursing as I was writing. I was writing out lyrics there, and out flowed all this prose. And I was like, okay, so great. Well, where's the rhymes? Where's the flows? Where's the poetry? And I would write for about 20 minutes, and then I would just screech to a halt. And the reason was the anger was exhausting, mentally, physically, creatively. And I know that anger then ends up being kind of just a sub-element of energy, you know, of loss of energy. But I feel I had to kind of draw that out, that like the three elements were lack of energy, screen life, and the anger itself. So how do Rage Against the Machine do it? How do they manage to exist? How do artists in general who kind of are fueled by anger, how do they manage to continue? And maybe that's I'll come to a little bit of that, but that's certainly a question for anyone else as well. If that is a part of your art, how do you continue? So when I sat down to write this crazy multi-faceted ball of anger into existence, I was trying to untangle stuff. I was really out of practice. And at the same time, I was noticing that other rappers and songwriters were making their own angry, sorrowful work. And it was incredibly artful. Denzel Curry. Oh my gosh. You see that and you're like, wow, that's how you do it. JPEG Mafia. What is that man on? Or Kate Tempest. And so me saying something now, it just feels like I'm adding to the noise. And that's where my phrase, this idea of my words are too much. There's too much, like, what do I have to give? I'm just adding to noise. So this might just kind of look like that classic middle-aged, frustrated artist phase. And perhaps it is. But whatever it is, I think nothing prepared me for what I was feeling and going through. Nothing in my life. Never expected to be locked out of my own head. Never expected to have so little time, so little energy, too much screen life. But you see, I believe that God is still sovereign, and the Holy Spirit is weaving new bonds of reconciliation, compassion, conviviality, and maybe doing that indiscriminately across the planet. The Holy Spirit's at work. And yet, even though I hold on to that, I just feel that daily weight of the sorrow. It's very real. And yet, I was trying to express, and I felt like there's not enough. So my words are too much, but it's not enough. What really helped me with the not enough was this man, Lee Scott. rapper from Runcorn, and his flow seems lazy, but it's not. It's just beautifully, perfectly weighted. And his songs run usually around 2 minutes long. Sometimes his best stuff is less than 2 minutes. So I went, okay, so I don't need to write an epic every time. I can just spit out that little bit of anger, and that will be enough. So I'm very grateful to Lee Scott for his, coming in at the right time and giving me that encouragement. So far I've got lyrics for about 6 of the 12 songs. There's a song called Something Inside So Wrong, and I think I'm grateful that it's coming together. The two things that I think that have helped me to temper my anger and actually help me just cope, because you think if you live with this for it's been over a year, how do you live with that? One thing is daily habit of just being grateful. Daily gratitude is a massive thing, and I've just worked that into becoming really natural to me. So I'm grateful for really big things and really, really small things all the time. And that somehow has a kind of, naturalizing against that, keeps it in place. And the second thing is my daughters. Actually, Evie, my older kid, is actually getting to the point where she's kind of speaking soothing things to me, which is amazing. And Josie, the younger one, her fun, her imagination just sometimes short circuits the kind of any kind of frustration, and that kind of helps me just to live in the moment and put the anger to one. So those are the main things that have helped. So I hope that makes sense. I'm still working away. I don't know exactly when or where I'm going to record all the lyrics. I think lots of my friends are just going to record in their own spots, and we'll see how it goes. But you will all, if you wish, get a chance to hear the album later this year.